You didn't think that they would really do it, did you? Is that what you think? What I'm referring to is the announcement that was made yesterday by Tobias Ellwood and a senior general in the British Army regarding the need possibly at some point in the future to conscript both men and women into the British Army. I noticed that some people did, for a while on Twitter and this web forum that I used to belong to that's kind of normie central. There was a thread on there that went to about, I don't know, 14 pages in a couple of hours of people worrying that their sons and maybe even their daughters were going to be sent off to the Ukraine. There was then other YouTubers doing videos about this, saying, oh, people won't go for all sorts of predictable reasons that I'm not going to go into, because everybody else has talked about those things, about woke and the kind of anti-nationalist culture that's being created. So what I'm going to do in this video is to actually talk to you about things or points of view that haven't been expressed before on this topic. So the first one is like a motivation. Why would they do this? In an ideal world, yeah, they would love to send your sons and daughters to run in front of machine gun bullets or get blown up and stuff, because these people are Satanists, they hate humanity, and they want to kill as many of us, God's creations, as possible. Second motivation is just energy harvesting. And they did succeed in that. Just think about that film Monsters Inc. It's a bit like that. So they enjoy putting sheeple, that's like Joe Normie, into a fear state and harnessing Joe Normie's energy through putting them into that fear state. And for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 hours yesterday, that definitely worked. There was a lot of energy being expended that was extremely fearful, as opposed to what I'm doing now, which is mocking it. The next thing to say is that it was never going to happen. In fact, if you cast your memories back, those of you who've got good memories, a couple of years ago, they actually tried. They made the same announcement, and it was definitely Tobias Ellwood, and I think it was the same senior general in the British Army who basically said, oh, we may need to conscript you to beat off the evil dictator Putin. So what happened 2 years ago? Answer, nothing. It was just empty words. It was them trying to put you into a fear state again 2 years ago. Back then, though, it was quite interesting, is that it wasn't really picked up by the general public. It just like washed over them. I guess because, D91 was still fairly fresh in their memory. You've still got the doomsters, and a lot of them are on this forum. I'm not sure whether they actually, I'm sure some of them are 77th. And, they like to hype things up so that they can get other people into their doom porn fear state as well. But the fact of the matter was, or is, it was never going to happen. And, as most of you will know by now, is that this morning, the day after, Sunak has basically said, oh, no, we were, he was speaking, Tobias was speaking out of turn there. We're not really planning to conscript your kids. Yeah, the reason for that, of course, was that it's like many of these things that they do. They tried it out with the Soviet Union. Is when they want to do some when they wanted to do some more new Soviet things, they would float it out, often through things like the Daily Mail, and then they would look at the comments to see whether they could actually gain consent for it. And this consent thing is absolutely vital to them. Now, I know I have some people who, they swallowed all of that Marxist programming at school, and they see, religion or anything to do with spirituality. It's like they've been conditioned into thinking, oh, it's just a control mechanism and stuff. But, one thing's for certain is that the people who are running this world, they definitely are extremely spiritual. They're extremely religious, and their religion, It's not Judaism, it's Satanism. But these people, anyway, they actually understand this idea of natural law. And they know that if they harm other people, and they initiate acts of harm, bad things will happen to them. That's natural law. So you might think then, well, how come they were able to do so many of these terrible things to us? Not just over the last 4 years, but over human history. And the answer to that is just dead simple. We agreed to it. And so long as they get our consent, then they're absolved of any adverse sort of comeback associated with these acts of harm. In fact, you could almost argue that we actually did it to ourselves. So if you go back to World War I, World War II, people blame politicians starting these stupid wars, but actually who was it who chose to put the uniform on? Who was it who chose to obey the order to be conscripted? It was the individuals who went off to France and obeyed the orders to run into machine gun bullets and got killed. So, as I said this thousands and thousands of times before on these videos, the solution to all of our problems is really simple. And that is stop complying. Stop being an obedient order follower, and instead do what's right. So if somebody's trying to coerce you into taking poison, and you bend to that, you take the knee to that, and you agree to that, well, you've only got yourself to blame, haven't you? You were the one that decided to have it. It wasn't as if somebody put you into a headlock and did it to you. They might have, in Germany and Austria, they threatened that, but they never actually did it, did they? And there's a reason for that. The perpetrators knew that they were going to be in big trouble. God would have punished them severely for that. But they do know that they're allowed to coerce us, bribe us, threaten us. If they can get us to run off a cliff, then that's not their fault, it's our fault. That's the way that natural law works, I'm afraid. And what we have to do, if you want to put a Christian perspective on it, what we have to do is to stand up for what's right. Pick up our cross and do what Jesus Christ did. And that means, if you want to go against coercion, that might mean you lose your job, your material trinkets, you lose your status. But I would say that that's a price that's well worth paying. It's for eternal salvation. And that's the game that's been played. That's what's happened over the last 4 years. It's been, as I said like before, it's just been a test. So are you going to, as I say, are you going to let them push you around? Or are you going to grow a backbone and just speak the truth and say, no, I'm not doing it? Wear a slave muzzle? No. Go to a Britney Spears concert? No. Go and fight and die in Ukraine? And just because it's lawful, they've passed a law or something, you will be conscripted. Well, why'd you have to obey that law? What I would say is that God's law will always trump law made by corrupt human beings who are under the influence of Satan. So what I would say is that to people is grow up. You need to grow up and take responsibility for your own life and not just cave in to a tiny little bit of pressure. Because, that is allowed. As I say to you, they are allowed to bribe you, coerce you. That's allowed. That's a test of you. How deep is your faith in the difference between right and wrong? When push comes to shove, what are you going to do? Are you going to side with right or are you going to go with wrong? The path of least resistance to keep your materialistic trinkets and your status and your Hugo Boss suit and your fancy job title. So to end on a positive then is you don't need to worry about these things. You don't need to worry about these threats or whatever, because they are empty threats. you always have the option to say no. And this is what was happening yesterday. This is why, again, they had to, it was just something that they were floating out, and basically enough people said no. So that meant there was going to be adverse consequences for them if they tried to railroad that one through. Again, that's why they had to roll back ultimately from making attendance at the Britney Spears compulsory, and fining and jailing people, putting them actually in jail, using violence against them. They weren't allowed to do that by God. So if you believe in God, you believe in natural law, you understand that these people, the doomsters sort of think that they're all powerful, but they're not. What they are allowed to do is, as Satan's minions, is to test us. And that's what that was yesterday, and a bit of energy harvesting. How many stupid, cowardly sheep can they scare? And they get off on that. They harvest their energy. So, yeah, that's all I want to say today. It's a nice day, and it's quite warm actually. It's probably, I don't know, it might even be positive degrees. But yeah, grow a backbone, stand up for what's right, and don't live in fear. And God bless.